was hiding my affair with my coworker well, but my husband saw our daughter's photo at his desk. Hi, Redditors. I am Angelina, and I am 26 years old. I don't know how to start explaining how I destroyed my wonderful marriage with my own actions, but I'll try. I hope anyone can learn from it and avoid making the same mistake that I made. My husband came into my office one fateful day to give me a surprise and saw the picture of our 1-year-old daughter on my colleague's table. He was so surprised when he did, and I was dumbfounded when I saw him staring at the picture. Please stay with me as I tell you how and why my colleague had my daughter's picture. My husband Bob was a very nice gentleman, I wouldn't lie. He takes care of more than I could ask for, but I guess I had always wanted more. He was a very handsome young man and very rich too, although he had the body of a Greek god. But when it comes to lovemaking, he is just so slothful. I was betrothed to Bob by my grandmother, who thought that marrying me off to a millionaire would alleviate our middle-class status. Although I had a job, she claimed that it wasn't bringing in more money as marrying a rich man would. I agreed with her because this was also what I wanted. Growing up, I didn't enjoy much luxury as my parents sadly left nothing but me to my poor grandmother, who loved and adored me more than anything else. At first, I didn't care about our status or the luxury because Grandma's love was more than enough for me. That was until I got to high school, where most of my mates were from a well-off family and would prey on whosoever they discovered came from a poor family. I was in pain because I wasn't able to walk with the biggest female stars in our school. Because of this, I pressured my grandmother, who was very good at making dresses, to make lovely and exquisite clothing designs, just to make everyone at school think I was from a rich family. My plan worked, and I also got to join the cheerleading team thanks to this. To cover up my biggest lie, I must have told a million lies, but it didn't matter to me as long as I could go to parties and get free designer materials from my newly formed friend. These made me so happy, and that was how I spent my high school life. When I got to college, I wanted to continue the same life, but it was very hard because my roommate knew all about me and could tell right away that I was lying. It was then that I decided to leave that life behind, focus on my studies and get good grades so that I would be able to get a good job that would pay millions, and I would be able to afford all the luxuries I wanted. Soon I bagged my degree in marketing and was lucky enough to secure a job in the city at an advertising agency, though it didn't look too promising. I decided to go for it, since it meant that I would be moving away from the lonely town and would meet a lot of influential people. Not long after I started working, my grandmother called me to inform me that she got a suitor for me, and that is how I met my now ex-husband, Bob. He looked so dashing as he sat down gently on the couch, stealing a few glances at me. My grandmother broke the silence by telling me that he was the grandson of one of her late friends. He worked at one of the biggest and most prestigious tech companies in the country, which was located in the same city I worked in. I was happy to hear that and was even more happy when I got to know that he receives millions of dollars as salary every month, which was exactly what I wanted. I pretended to be reluctant to marry Bob and pretended like I was uncomfortable with him. When he noticed this, he told me that he was going to make me very comfortable with him. He did as he promised by taking me out on a date, which made me even more cozy with him. We got closer and I ended up actually falling for him. I think he did the same too because I don't know how time flew by. Before I knew it, he proposed to me and we got engaged. Forward to when our wedding day came, it was one of the most memorable moments in both our lives, which I also would never forget. During our honeymoon, Bob was always super romantic, doing the littlest things for me, caring about my needs, and showering me with a lot of gifts. Although he was very slow and lazy when it came to lovemaking, the romance and gifts covered up for it, so I didn't have any problem with that. Our honeymoon literally ended almost immediately it started, and I didn't want it to end because I was having fun. Bob resumed work, but he still showered me with lots of love and gifts, which I enjoyed each time. Even when I resumed office, Bob would still send lots of flowers and different forms of gifts to me, but he began to spend less and less romantic time with me, coupled with the laziness he portrays while we're making love, which ended up leaving me highly unsatisfied and wanting for more. Our marriage became so boring to me and I just wanted to let out all my worries and have fun, so I used the excuse of working overtime to Bob and went to a bar to drink. After several drinks, I was drunk, and I didn't know when I started spilling my problems to the barman, who just kept on looking at me like I was a clown and nodding his head back and forth. I was a little bit tipsy, so I decided to let loose a little and dance my legs off at the bar. While I was dancing, swinging my head left to right, one of my colleagues, Jason, saw me and tried to talk to me, but I don't think he got much of a conversation from me. I could remember him just nodding to any rubbish I was saying. He knew I was drunk, so he offered to take me home. He didn't know where I was staying since he was just my colleague, and it was that day that I talked that long with him. I tried explaining my house to him as he drove me, and it was way better than a random stranger taking me home. My husband wasn't home and had dropped a message that he had to work overtime, so Jason took the initiative to tend to me like a little girl until I slept off. Waking up the next day, Jason said he waited for me to wake up because he wanted to prepare a warm bath for me, and I thanked him. He left after, but that day, something clicked in me, and I loved the way he took care of me and looked at me. I know it sounds weird, but I couldn't explain how I was feeling. I began wanting James, mostly in bed. When I was done with the bath, I prepared for work, and I went down to see that he also had prepared breakfast before he left, which was placed perfectly on the dining table. It felt wrong that I managed to let a stranger into my husband's house, but I still didn't mind and only fawned about what he had done before he left. During lunchtime at the office, Jason invited me over for lunch, and during this time, he asked me about the reason I was drunk at the bar the previous night, with a solemn look on my face. I was reluctant at first, but I thought, what was the worst that could happen? I explained to him about the ordeals I faced at home. I don't know when I blurted out the part of my husband not satisfying me sexually. I immediately apologized to him, saying that I shouldn't have said something like that to him and burden him with my problems. But Jason didn't mind. He told me that he found it surprising that no one was around when he brought me home, and almost thought that I lived alone until he saw my marriage pictures. He felt sorry for me and said words of comfort to me. From then on, we began to spend even more friendly time together during our lunch break. While at home, it felt like Bob was distant to me. At work, I felt safe in the arms of Jason. I became increasingly frustrated as whenever I decided to make love to my husband, he would give me the excuse of being tired after a long day. And if we managed to, he would only spend very few minutes and growl like a wounded cow when he was done, like he had spent hours. This left me unsatisfied, and I would lie to him that I was okay with him. I would only turn around and face the other way whenever we wanted to sleep. One night, I invited Bob to bed after dinner, making it known to him that I was in the mood. I dressed in my best lingerie, hoping to catch his attention and make him want me, but I was so wrong. My husband just took one look at me, complimented my look. Then he stood up and left for the bedroom, leaving me alone, standing looking so perplexed. I became increasingly frustrated by what he did, but I pretended that it was all okay. I expected my husband to say something about it the next day, apologize and do something different, but I was only wrong. We went through our routine of me doing the chores and preparing breakfast while he just eats and leaves. By the time I got to the office, I found a nice designer bag and a box of chocolate on my table. Of course, it was sent by my husband. I called him, feigning happiness, and thanked him for the gifts. As I dropped the phone, I sneered in frustration. I was already tired of the gifts. Although I wanted luxury, I also wanted the passion that comes with love. During lunch, I vented out my frustrations to Jason, who felt sorry for me. He invited me for dinner at his place and told me that it would make me feel better. I wanted to refuse, but then I changed my mind, after some persuasion from Jason. After work, we proceeded to his place. I had to lie to Bob that I had an important deal to work on and I was working overnight. Bob believed me and didn't question me. Jason made a very nice dinner, and when we were done, he started to make small talk and even started making jokes, something I hadn't felt in a while. I was mesmerized by his charms and looks, and for the first time I realized that he was pretty. He was tall, had cute blue eyes and blonde hair. I spilled wine on him while being lost in my thoughts. When he took off his shirt, I got even more lost as I saw his body, which was perfectly toned, with his perfect 8-pack and nice biceps. I couldn't help but lust over his body. My thoughts suddenly got hold of me, and I stood up abruptly and gave him a deep kiss, and to my surprise, he kissed me back. We didn't do anything that night, even though deep down we both wanted to. Jason only decided to be a gentleman and prepared the guest room for me to sleep. As I drifted to sleep, all I could only think of was Jason's touch. When I got home the next day, Bob wasn't at home, so I decided to make a warm bath for myself. As I dipped my body into the bath, I couldn't help but reminisce about the kiss I shared with Jason. I immediately drifted into the world of fantasy as I pleasured myself all the way, imagining Jason being right with me, spending passionate time with me. The next day, Bob told me he was going on a business trip, which was going to take a week. I was elated because I saw this as a chance to spend more time with Jason without getting worried about anything. More importantly, to make love to him and feel the passion I had always longed for. I helped Bob pack his bag that weekend, and as soon as he left, I contacted Jason asking him if we could meet at his place and spend some time with him. He accepted without hesitating. I dressed myself up with a bright pink mini gown, matching heels and purse. I also did a little bit of makeup and put my blonde, wavy hair down, contrary to my everyday official look of suit, ponytail, and big glasses. I looked at myself in the mirror with admiration of the new me. It had been long I felt that way, to be precise, during our honeymoon. I went to meet Jason, who was waiting for me in his car outside the house. Immediately he saw me. He looked at me with such adoration while I smiled shyly as he got down to open the door for me to get in, a gesture that made my heart flutter. He told me that he wanted to take me out on a date before taking me to his place. I agreed immediately and we took off to our rendezvous. He started driving and he kept stealing glances at me at various intervals until we got to the location he picked for our date. He took me to this 5-star restaurant, which was the best in town. The waiter brought the menu and he asked me to order mine first and to also pick an order for him. It was awkward at first when he asked me to pick for him, but I did anyway. We both ended up having the same dish. When we were done eating, we went to his house. When we got there, he told me he had another surprise waiting for me in the bedroom. As I got in, I was in awe of what I saw. Everywhere was decorated with roses, and rose petals were also scattered on the floor and on the bed. It was such a romantic setting. I turned to Jason with a surprised and flattered face, asking him if he did this himself all for me. He nodded positively and gave me a nice deep kiss. And from there, we moved to having a very passionate night, which I had long waited for. Jason told me that he wanted to fulfill some of his weirdest fantasies that he had. I also had my weird fantasies, so I agreed immediately. He asked me to put on some lingerie, which I did. Then he began to tell me what his sexual fantasies are, and surprisingly, it matched mine too. It all happened so fast and ended so fast. I can still remember how loud I moaned and how his groans sounded. I woke up the next day to breakfast in bed by Jason. As he brought it closer to my bed, I couldn't help but fawn over his gesture and blushed as he brought it to me. He sat down near me, took a little bite from the food, and fed the remaining to me. As he was doing this, he was staring deep into my eyes, and all I could just do at that point was to stare back at him. We finished eating, and as I was about to dress up to leave, Jason held on to me like a baby, asking me not to leave. I asked him what he really wanted, and he told me he wanted more of me. I was happy inside of me, and we got down to business immediately. After our little quick lovemaking was done, I prepared to go home and prepare for work the next day. Monday came and I excitedly prepared to go to work, this time dressing a little bit sexier than before, obviously to impress Jason. When I got to the office, my coworkers all complimented my new look, including Jason, who whispered into my ear that I looked so sexy. He then continued to whisper that I should meet him during lunch at the record room. I knew why he wanted me there and was skeptical about doing that because of the fear of getting caught. When lunch came, I reluctantly agreed and we secretly went there. We had a fun time as I enjoyed the deep kisses and passionate lovemaking, even though it was for a short time. We finished up quickly and went back into the office separately to avoid suspicions. I was smiling and giggling to myself, remembering those moments. I would also steal glances at him, and he reciprocates the favor by winking at me, which I blushed every single time. I didn't know karma was waiting for the right time to strike. Few days passed since it was the weekend and my day off was also next. I yearned for his tender touch, so I just messaged him and told him that I was coming to his house. I dressed up so sexy and went straight to his house, and immediately he saw me. He complimented me. As usual, he cooked a nice dinner for me, and after we rested for a while, we got down to action. We started with a little bit of foreplay, and he took me to a land of ecstasy as he gave me oral activities. I reciprocated by gulping in his tool, and he was also pleasured. As we finished with foreplay, we moved down to the main thing, and I would not lie. It was one of the best sexual encounters I ever had. It was even better and more passionate than the last one we had earlier as we explored different positions. While my husband would spend little time and claimed he was tired without even satisfying me, Jason went on and on with rounds, only stopping for a few minutes in the middle, trying out different positions whilst being wild, gentle, and passionate at the same time, and making sure he leaves me satisfied each time. After hours and hours of making both of us pleased, he finally stopped and he apologized for stopping so quickly, but I told him not to do so, as he has left me so satisfied and happy. We later slept like a newly wedded couple as I snuggled in bed with him. As I dozed off, I couldn't help but think about Bob and wonder if I wasn't being unfair to him. Clouded by the pleasure I was receiving from Jason, I discarded Bob's thoughts from my mind and just drifted off to sleep. When I woke up the next day, I went to take my bath, preparing to go home. As I was in the tub filled with lather, Jason came in and joined me in the tub. He whispered sweet nothings into my ear, then told me he loved me. I was surprised when he said so and thought he was only kidding, but as was about to leave his house again, he held me from behind, confessing his love and saying that I could just divorce my husband and stay with him instead. Yeah. Of course, I discarded him and just gave him a vague smile and left for home. Imagine my surprise when I got home only to meet Bob, who had come earlier than expected. I was stuttering as he asked me where I had been. Clearly, he had just come that morning and expected to meet me, but I wasn't around. I managed to gather my confidence and lied to him that I had worked overnight. I told him that I was tired and needed to rest, so I contacted my manager and took the day off. My birthday soon came, and as usual, Bob was so busy that he forgot about it, and when he did remember, he only sent gifts to me and told me he wasn't going to make it that day. I was so heartbroken. I thought that at least I could enjoy my birthday happily with my lawfully wedded husband, but I was disappointed that I couldn't. I was drowning myself in tears as I thought about my husband who wasn't attending to me as much as I wanted him to. As I was thinking about it, I received a phone call from Jason. I wiped my tears quickly as I received his call to hear him sing a birthday song to me. When he was done singing, he invited me out for a fun birthday time out. As the night was falling, he took me to a restaurant and back home. The night was something I wish never ended. After my fun night, I came home very happy and met Bob at home. It turned out that he had lied just to throw me a surprise party. I felt so guilty about the time I spent with Jason. I shouldn't have been so quick to judge Bob, and I knew. He invited a few of his colleagues and my grandmother, whom I hugged immediately as I haven't seen her in a very long time. Bob stylishly took me aside and asked where I had been. I stood there speechless for a while before I managed to lie about an urgent, unfinished work that I had to attend to. Bob gave me a suspicious look, but he decided to believe me anyway. The night ended up being fun, more fun than I had expected. I had a lot of fun before I finally took my bath, took care of my grandmother, and finally went to bed. That night, only one question lingered on my mind. Am I being unfair to Bob? I wondered about this as I drifted to sleep. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and ready for the day's activities. I looked at my time and realized that I was going to be late for work. I couldn't find my husband beside me, so I thought he had already gone to work. But to my uttermost shock, I found him downstairs in the kitchen giggling with my grandmother as they both set the dining table. Shock was written all over my face, and I had to pinch myself to be sure that I wasn't dreaming as I looked at every house chores already done by my husband. I gathered my composure and ate breakfast before getting ready for work. It looked like my whole life was coming together. When I was done, Bob offered to drive me to work, which he had never done in our 2 years of marriage. Of course, I was surprised, but I was also happy. On our way, I kept on stealing surprised glances at him and smiling to myself when he parked in front of my workplace. He held my hand and apologized for the way he had been behaving before, and told me that he was ready to go back to being the romantic guy he used to be. As he said those words, tears flowed down my cheeks as I felt guilty for cheating on my husband. He hugged me thinking I was crying tears of joy. Little did he know that my tears were that of guilt. He gave me a long goodbye kiss. I got down and went to my office, still feeling very hurt and guilty. I entered the office looking so gloomy and ignored everyone, including Jason. I just went to my desk and buried my head in sorrow. Soon lunchtime came, and when Jason tried to reach out to me, I ignored him and just went ahead to eat my lunch. He soon approached me at my lunch table. I ignored him at first, but he kept pestering me. I explained the whole situation to him and told him that we should end our unclean relationship. After much hesitation, he finally agreed, and I was surprised that he did, but I couldn't care less and was so happy that everything would be sorted. When I got home that day, Bob was already home and had prepared dinner. Meanwhile, my grandmother wanted to go back to her place and leave the two of us to have a nice time with each other. I hugged her, smiling and telling her that I would miss her. Bob opted to drop her off at the subway, while I decided to stay at home due to my tiredness. As soon as they left, I devoured on the food he had prepared happily, after which I took a shower and prepared to go to bed. By that time, my husband came back and he also took a shower. By the time he was done, I had already slept. I could feel his tender kiss on my head even in my sleep as he cuddled next to me, which he hadn't done in a very long time. Our lives took a better turn for the good. My husband woke up before me, prepared breakfast, did a few house chores, then prepared my hot bath before waking me up. The only chore I am left with is usually laundry, which he is always bad at, which is why he left it for me. I go to the office every day without having to lie to my husband about work or feel guilty about hurting him. 2 weeks after, I got home to see a surprise dinner that my husband had prepared for me. I was so excited as I saw the candlelight decorated dinner table in front of me with glasses of champagne and my favorite dishes and dessert in which he made himself, apparently. He had gotten off work early that day and decided to do something nice for me. He suddenly started playing soft romantic music as he held his hand forward and took mine. As we danced, he stared deep into my eyes and I felt his love rekindling in my heart again. After we were done dancing, he took me into the bedroom, gave me a passionate kiss as he slowly undressed. He slowly started to take my clothes off too, and I felt the passion between us. I started to breathe heavily while he continued taking off my clothes. He slowly put me to bed and decided to foreplay a little before he got down to business. I felt surprised by the turn of events, but I was more surprised when we got to the main business and my husband handled me more than he used to before. When we were done, I felt so satisfied and happy that I got my bob back. That night was one of the best nights I ever had. I thought that I was going to have my happily ever after, but I have never been so wrong. 2 weeks after the wonderful dinner with my husband, I felt sick while coming from work and decided to go to the hospital. When I got there, I ran a few tests and then came the news that sent chills down my spine. I was pregnant. I knew I was supposed to be happy, but I was a month gone already, which means the baby is Jason's, not my husband's. I went home feeling devastated at the news. Forgetting myself, I dumped the test result by the shelf beside our bed and my husband saw it. When I saw him picking it up, I thought that I was going to be in trouble, but contrary to what I felt, he was very happy and did not suspect anything. Instead, he lifted me up and swirled me out of excitement. I could see the happiness on his face as he realized that he was going to be a father. That is why I decided to forego my plan of, pro-choice. After that day, my husband began to pamper me even more, and Jason never had a doubt that it was his child when he saw my baby bump as it grew. He just congratulated me and we decided to remain friends. Bob would prepare breakfast and dinner for me each day, and he also does every little thing for me and gives me a massage whenever I'm stressed. Soon enough, it was time for the baby to come. On that particular day, I was laying down on the bed beside Bob when suddenly I felt a sharp pain. I tried to endure it for a while, but later I couldn't take it anymore and told Bob about it. Immediately, he took me to the hospital. By then, the pain was more excruciating and I was told it was time. I was rushed to the labor room while my husband paced up and down the passage. Soon enough, I heard the cry of my beautiful daughter, Maddie. She was like an angel as her face lit up when she was brought to me. I looked at her with so much love, but also with the feeling of sadness and guilt. As Bob held Maddie, he looked at her lovingly and gave her a kiss on her cheek, promising her a lot of things. While he was doing this, some questions just kept lingering in my mind. What if in some way, Jason finds out about his daughter and he comes for her? What if my husband finds out my whole affair and the fact that the child is from the affair? I thought about these for a long time, but I didn't let it get to me. I decided to forget about it and move on with my new life as motherhood sets in. Time went by, and soon it was Maddie's first-year birthday. I invited all my colleagues, including Jason, which turned out to be a mistake. Jason carried Maddie to play with her, but it seems he spotted something that left him puzzled. I tried to question him, but he didn't say anything and just hurriedly left, and Maddie started crying. I wondered why he did that, but I didn't bother until a few days later when he came into the office with an angry look and confronted me, throwing a DNA result on my desk. I was shocked and speechless. I decided to play it tough and confronted him for taking a sample behind my back and told him that I would sue him for that, but he told me that the whole affair thing would come out in the open. I thought about it and realized that in a way he was right. I asked how he suspected that she was his daughter. He said he suspected at first from the hair color, but since my husband also had the same hair color, he discarded the thought until he suddenly saw a birthmark peculiar to their family on her neck. Then he had a doubt. That was why he secretly took a hair sample from Maddie. It was all confusing as he said all these. I begged him not to come for his daughter and destroy my marriage. He told me he didn't intend on doing that and just requested that I make him see her once in a while and also that I give one of her pictures. I hesitated, but I had to succumb to his request and did as he wanted whilst pleading with him not to destroy my marriage. He agreed, and I made him see Maddie every other weekday when I picked her from the nursery before my husband came to pick us up. This went on perfectly well until this particular day my husband decided to pay a surprise visit to the office. He had finished early from his workplace, so he decided to pick up Maddie, and both gave me a surprise visit. But imagine his surprise when he saw his daughter's picture on another man's desk, which was located directly at the entrance of the office. He stood there perplexed. As I came back from the restroom, I was dumbfounded to see him staring at the picture. Jason, who was on a call, realized soon, and also stood up in shock. Bob left without saying a word, and I couldn't go home straight, feeling guilty about what I had done. I went into the bar on my way to drink a little until I finally had the courage to go home. By the time I came back home, he had packed up all my belongings and told me to move away from the house. He didn't even allow me to take my daughter along. I tried begging him, but it was of no use. Apparently, on his way home, he branched the hospital and had DNA done because he had so many doubts once he saw the picture. And that was when he found out she wasn't his daughter. Yeah. He said he was disappointed in me and he didn't believe I would hurt him like that. He pleaded with me to tell him that the doctor perhaps made a mistake and I would never cheat on him, but I just stood there in silence and shame. I begged him and told him I could explain what had happened. I said the first thing that caused all this, the fact that he didn't give me time in the beginning or even looked at me or pleased me in bed. I still remember the expression on his face when he looked down at me. I should never have blamed him for cheating on him, and he didn't deserve it. I begged him to give me till the morning before I leave, since it was very late and dangerous, and I'll have to go to my grandmother's place. It was clear that he still cared about me, so I tried using that to my advantage that night, but he didn't even look at me. He was never going to forgive me, and I knew that. Update. I contacted my grandmother and told her about everything, and it was so sad hearing her cry. I decided to lodge into a hotel that day to see if I could fix anything. Soon, news about my affair with Jason spread throughout the office, because of which both me and Jason got fired. I was still around in the hotel and my money was diminishing. Within a week, Jason got a new job at a prestigious company while I was still wandering around. He then went ahead to fight for custody of Maddie and won the case against my husband since he was the biological father. I went to meet him and reminded him of the promise he made to me to get married to me, and that I could do that now, and we could be one perfect family. He smirked, then told me that he had a girlfriend and they are going to get married in 2 months. Apparently, they were just taking a break and it was an open relationship they were in. I couldn't believe it, so I was dumbfounded. He said when the invitation gets printed, I'm going to get invited, and left there chuckling to himself and shaking his head. I saw Bob and begged him to take me back, but he told me to sign the divorce paper then and there. I cried and cried that I didn't want to, but he turned deaf ears to it. I had to sign reluctantly, and since I was guilty of cheating on him. He left me there wailing as I cried in regret and sorrow. It has been 6 months since the whole incident, and since I went back to stay with my grandmother. Bob is now happily married to another lady, or so I heard. Jason is also expecting a child from his new wife, and as he told me, unlike me who only cared about only material things, fancy dates and passion, his wife showed him true love. Now I am back to square one, living with my grandmother in town and resorting to taking up menial jobs just to make ends meet. I lost true love, a nice lovely family, and a good life to a passion that would only bring trouble. I would advise that no woman should do whatever I had done, because it would only end up in pain. I think about it every single day, that if only I had been patient, and if only I had voiced out my frustrations to Bob, my life would have taken a better turn. Have you ever felt like someone is watching your every move? Imagine finding out that your own spouse has planted a hidden camera on your blouse. This is the shocking reality one woman faced when her husband suspected her of cheating with his best friend. I really deserve every punishment that my husband is giving, but why was I the only one who got punished while I actually had an affair with his best friend? Yes, I was his wife, or maybe I still am his wife because he refused to divorce me but decided to make my life a living hell. The funny thing is that he actually told me that he was not going to divorce me, but he will make sure that I suffer for all the heartache that I had caused. He actually made a promise that he will make me regret the day that we first met and the day I was brought to this earth. I know I took a wrong turn to deal with the whole thing. I know I shouldn't have fallen in love with his friend and best man, but he was giving me what I had been not getting from my husband. The guy made me feel secure, happy, and alive while my husband was busy with his own thing and focusing more on his career. It was supposed to be a once-off thing, but I got carried away and now karma is dealing with me so bad. Please give me tips on how I should have dealt with this. I still love my husband, but I don't know how to get him back. What should I do? I don't really know what came over me. Lust and craving for something outside your relationship can cause a huge disaster and drift between couples. I craved for something that I was not getting in my relationship. I went outside my perfect imperfect relationship and ruined the only good thing that I had. I regret it, and I don't know what to do to fix it. I mean, I cheated with his friend, who was also his best man on our wedding day. Now that I got caught, I don't really know how to recover from this. Where will I go, and what would I do without my husband in my life? I know I messed up, but can't he at least give me one last chance? I won't deny that I did him wrong, and what I did is unforgivable. I acted like a loose witch who doesn't think before taking action. Please tell me what I should do or say to make my husband rethink his decision. I miss him so much. My name is Mia Hendricks, female 30, and I first met my husband, Nick Mendez. I won't say on the road, but the day I met him, I had a flat tire and ran out of gas, plus it was getting late. I'd been stuck on the side of the road for like 2 or 3 hours. Mind you, that time I was very far from the gas station. Nick was a cop at that time, so when he and his partner showed up, they asked me what was wrong and why I was parking at a hijacking spot. At that time, I didn't know that my car got stuck on a hijacking spot since I was not from Brooklyn. To their kindness, Nick asked his partner that they should take me to the gas station. So they took me to the gas station and even helped me with my flat tire. They even made it their priority to convoy with me to my Nana's house where I was heading. I thanked them after I got to my Nana's house, but Nick randomly asked for my number, saying that I should call him whenever I am in a situation like the one I found myself in. To me, I felt like I owed him, or let me say them a token of appreciation for helping me out. Well, more like Nick helped me out because his partner was busy with his phone in the car. So I gave him my number and the guy decided to call me instantly just to make sure that I didn't give him the wrong number. Since then, we have been communicating via WhatsApp, Messenger, and Telegram. Nick is a natural, selfless, kind, bubbly person with a little bit of being down to earth and shy. He had a very beautiful smile for a man. We became friends. He would even take me on dates sometime during the time that I was visiting my Nana. I would enjoy every moment that I would spend with him. He was a funny guy with an amazing sense of humor. Another thing about Nick is that he is a gentleman. He knows how to make a woman happy. He knew exactly where to press to make a woman blush or smile. Not to forget that he loves his job so much to a point that even my Nana knows him by name. I had heard that he was a great help to the community when it comes to fighting crime and finding the bad guys or thugs. You know, even if he wasn't a cop or if my Nana was not a fan of his, I would have fallen in love with Nick. Anyway, when Nick was away, he was working night shifts. We used to call each other every day or every chance we got. Until one day when I called his phone and was answered by some random girl. I asked who she was, but she didn't answer me. Instead, she asked who I was and why I was calling her man. That day, my heart sank. I couldn't even concentrate properly on my job and school for a week, which led me to lose some focus and almost got me fired at work. Mind you, that time we were not even dating yet, but I was already jealous. I started acting like a psycho girlfriend on the poor guy because of the girl that had answered his phone. Did I fall in love with Nick sooner than expected? I asked him about the girl and he told me that she was no one. I don't know why my heart was broken because Nick and I were just friends, right? He apologized about the girl and promised to make it up to me when he gets back. So I forgave him when he did me wrong because he wasn't next to me. But when I do the same, it becomes World War II. I loved the way he would look at me, like I was the only precious thing that has ever existed. Whenever I was with him, I would find myself drooling over him. That's how handsome my husband, or let me say my ex-husband, was. His kindness and the way he made me feel like I am the only woman to exist on this earth made me fall much harder for him every single day. I loved everything about him, you know. He was just too perfect to be true. Time passed and we made our relationship official. Everything was just perfect. We were one of those perfect couples that doesn't fight a lot. Yes, we would squabble over some silly things, but it was never a big argument. Nick is bubbly and full of fun, but he had his quiet and reserved side. I liked the fact that he knew how to take responsibility for his own actions instead of running away from it or finding someone to blame for his behavior. Nick is that kind of person that would just bluntly say or speak his mind without caring how you will receive it. After we had officialized our relationship, we enjoyed each other's company. We were inseparable friends or twins. Yes, we had our fair share of struggles and challenges, but we would always conquer it all by sticking together no matter what. But I didn't like the fact that Nick was actually a person that doesn't open up a lot about his life, and I would say that he had some sort of anger issues. It's like he had experienced some childhood trauma that made him have anger issues, but he knew how to hide it with his smile and kindness. I think that's why he became a cop, to fight off his anger issues. 9 months passed, Nick proposed, and I officially became his fiancé. I was just so happy and everything was still smooth at that time. That was the best thing I had ever got. Even my Nana was happy and that was enough for my heart. It took us the whole year to think and plan what we wanted for the wedding, and when that day came, I messed it all up. All because of lust and craving for something different. He really made me the happiest woman alive, and I was just glad and felt blessed to have someone like Nick. I really and truly loved him. I just don't know what pushed me to commit adultery, especially with someone close to him. That's being evil and inconsiderate. We got married on the 12th month of our relationship. I knew where and what I was getting myself into when I said I do. But I just couldn't be satisfied with what I had, and went outside my marriage, and not only to jeopardize it, but destroy it in the process, without even thinking that I was breaking my vows. So one beautiful, sunny yet busy day, Trevor Gibson, the guy I had an affair with, male, 31, who was Nick's friend, and I first met at my small restaurant, as I was on duty to serve and cook for my customers that day since I was short on staff. He was friendly, kind, fun, and was always willing to listen to me and my problems, you know. I couldn't help but notice how attractive he was. He had a charming smile and a confident air about him that I found irresistible. Before I knew it, we were deep in conversation, and I found herself feeling drawn to him. As time went on, I found myself drawn to Trevor's youthful energy and zest for life. I began to feel a connection with him that I hadn't felt in a long time. However, I knew that I was committed to Nick, but I couldn't ignore the connection that I had with Trevor. Trevor and I were spending more time together, exploring new ventures. It was fun. I got to be free and be me again. Yes, I needed a friend to pass time with, but I felt something for Trevor. Despite my initial intentions to keep things platonic, my feelings for Trevor grew stronger each day. I found myself daydreaming about him and eagerly awaiting our conversations on a social media platform called Discord, since it was where we would communicate, because I didn't want my husband to find out about my newly formed friendship with Trevor. One day, I couldn't resist the temptation any longer. I had to either choose to stay away from Trevor and throw away how I feel, or I confess everything. So I decided to meet Trevor in a restaurant kilometers away from where my house is, just to see if our connection was the way I felt, or he was on his own game. So we arranged to meet at a local coffee shop, and my heart raced with excitement and guilt. So I confessed to the guy. I know it was a slutty move that I did, but I felt like confessing rather than to die with something that you had been longing to take out your chest. What surprised me was that he also felt the same way, but he wanted to keep our thing a secret because he had someone in his life, of which I understood because I also had Nick in my life, and if he was to find out about my abomination with his friend. But that time I didn't know that he was Nick's friend from university, and they were also working together on some cases because he had never introduced me to any of his friends up until the day he was hosting a braai at our house. Trevor's energy and mine just clicked. I don't know how, but we had that kind of connection or chemistry that I also can't explain. My husband, or must I say ex-husband, was always either working late night shifts or long afternoon hours, and leaving me alone in the house. So on my day off work times, I would go and visit my Nana and stay with her. Even though our intimate moments were no longer the same, I was getting by him. The more my husband was not available, the more my feelings for Trevor grew stronger. We got so close to the point that I was no longer afraid to go out and meet up with Trevor behind Nick's friend. One day, Nick was hosting a braai at our house. I was surprised to see Trevor at that time. Nick introduced us. I couldn't tell him that I had already met Trevor, so I pretended like it was my first time seeing him. During the braai that Nick was hosting, I was not really comfortable because I didn't know what he would say to Nick since they were drinking alcohol. My heart was not really at ease. Trevor was working as an attorney, so the time Nick and I got married, he was busy with a big case outside the country. Trevor and I had already been out several times. He made me feel alive and appreciated, you know. What I did was wrong on so many levels. I should have ended the abomination whilst I had time, but guess what I did? I continued seeing him on the side. Well, I couldn't let go of him. I don't know why, but whenever I would think of cutting off our cheating, because he also had a girlfriend, I would feel like I would be letting go of my happiness. After some time, I decided to be brave and end things with Trevor, even though my heart didn't want me to, but because I loved Nick, and I believed that he was the one for me and no one else. I had always imagined myself spending my whole life and growing old with my first love. I couldn't risk Nick finding out about my abomination, as I thought that would destroy and jeopardize our relationship and destroy our marriage. Nick was the missing piece in my heart and soul, while Trevor was the happiness that I had been longing for too long. I knew I was loved and secured by Nick. He loved me for me, you know. He made me show the other side of me that I had never known existed. He knew how to treat me right and make me his first, well, when he felt like it or was not busy with work. I don't know what really came over me to mess such a good thing that was going on between Nick and I, but I guess my heart loved Nick so much, but it also desired Trevor's energy and the action because the guy really knew how to make a woman squirt without trying so hard. So days turned to weeks and weeks to a month. I had been trying by all means to ignore the feeling of needing Trevor, but I was really failing. I missed him. I missed the way he made me feel. I really tried to be the perfect wife for Nick, you know. I tried to be committed to my marriage, but it was just so hard. It was like I was forcing things with Nick. Yes, I loved him, and I actually still love him, but my body desired Trevor's affection and the way he was exploring my body. Sometimes I would even hand service myself while calling Trevor's name. That's how much affection he had on me. I then decided to just give Trevor a call, hoping that I won't find him with his girlfriend. Luckily, he answered the call and agreed to meet up with me at our usual spot. As I would go out more often, Nick eventually saw my sudden change behavior and the way I would dress when going out. So one day he came home and asked to speak with me. Mind you, that time I had plans with Trevor, but I obeyed Nick's request. So during our conversation, Nick literally asked me who I was seeing behind his back. Of course, I lied and said no one but he told him the truth, because if he finds out by himself, there would be a problem, and I would regret ever lying to him. As much as I wanted to tell Nick the truth, but I couldn't afford to put his friendship with Trevor in jeopardy. I mean, Trevor was his childhood best friend, and I was still enjoying my time with Trevor, so I decided not to tell Nick. I knew he was going to freak out when he learned about my affair with his best friend, but I had to protect all of us. I didn't want to witness Nick unleashing his anger issues and hurt someone in the process, because once he gets angry, he becomes uncontrollable and unstoppable. It just seems like he is possessed or something. I had asked Nick to try and talk to a therapist about his issues so that he would get help, but it was like I had poured gas on a fire. He busted and told me that he would never speak to a stranger about his life. You know, I pleaded with him and even gave him the mind-blowing intimate sessions, but he just wouldn't budge. I love my husband, or my ex-husband, so much, but he is just too stubborn and always wants to do things his own way, which was somehow frustrating to me. Time went on and our anniversary came. I was actually not even looking forward to it because things were not sparkling like they were before between Nick and I. Mind you, we had started a tradition of celebrating all our anniversaries. Nick has always been the one in charge of how and where we were going to celebrate our anniversary. So this time he decided to make an exclusive party, whereby we would invite all our close friends and families and maybe colleagues. Meaning Trevor will also be at the party as my man's best friend, of course. So the party went on and everyone was enjoying themselves, but I wasn't, unfortunately. I had been stealing glances with Trevor and I really missed his action. It was really hard being in the same room as Trevor, knowing that we were actually in an affair, some sort of relationship. I had asked Noah to act civil around me, and I would do the same because I didn't want people to start speculating things. Even though I was not comfortable with my decision, it had to be made, so we agreed on being civil towards each other. So when he saw me sitting alone, he came over and we started talking. It was surprising how he could pretend like everything was okay while I was shaking in my boots. I didn't want Nick to see us together. I think it was guilt eating me up, but the guy was relaxed, so I had to also pretend and relax. As the night went on, Trevor and I continued to chat, and our affection grew stronger. We danced together, shared a few drinks, and eventually found ourselves alone in a secluded part of the venue. I knew there and then that I must have fallen hard for Trevor because I had missed his touch, the way he would appreciate my body and make me feel young and carefree. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I couldn't resist. He had that soft touch that would make me want to ask him not to stop what he was doing. It was like his touch and kisses were a drug. Not to mention our intimate moments, they were what I had been. We were there under the moonlight when Trevor and I kissed for the first time since we broke things off. Our kiss was passionate and intense, and we both knew that we wanted more. I know what I did was wrong and evil, but I couldn't resist. I missed him. And the way our kiss was heated, I knew that he missed me too, even though we knew that we were doing something wrong, and there were great chances to get caught. For the next few months, Trevor and I continued our affair in secret. I mean, we couldn't resist each other. He was bringing me happiness that I was not getting from my husband since he was always busy. So we would meet up at hotels or secluded parks, always making sure to keep our relationship hidden from everyone else. I know what I did was sluttish and evil, but I had to at least get my happiness outside since my husband couldn't. I mean, Nick is the kind of guy that would be romantic, shower you with love and all, but when it came to affection, making a lady happy, he dismally failed, which led me to crave for something else, something that would make me happy and feel complete. I wanted to be myself. I have seen one of Nick's friends with his wife and the way the guy was treating his wife, touching his wife. I wanted that. I craved for it, and I got it from Trevor. Even though it was all lust and affection, there was no love. Weeks later, I had been living in fear and thought that my husband was seeing through me what I had been doing. I felt like the abomination that I had done was written all over me, and it didn't help with the guilt I was feeling. During those weeks, my husband suddenly decided that he was moving out of the house. When I asked him why he was doing that, he told me that it was for the best, not only for him, but for myself also. I didn't understand his lame and lousy excuse, so I fought with him about moving. After the whole begging and throwing tantrums that I did think he would change his mind, the guy continued with his plans and moved out of the house. Not knowing that his idea of moving out was actually a trap, and I actually fell for it. Nick was a police officer, but he knew his way around computers and those dodgy things that hackers do with computers. As I was still sad about how Nick left saying he was moving out, I received a call from Trevor, asking me what I was busy with and if I would be able to meet up with him at a certain bed and breakfast, B&B, name withheld for security purposes, that was not too far from New York. At first I hesitated, but eventually gave in because I told myself that I had nothing to lose by the way, plus Nick had left me in the house alone. Later on, I wore my coat with a sexy number underneath. I looked super sexy, I would say. We had agreed that we would meet where we were going, not knowing that I was bugged, imagine. So Trevor and I met, and the moment we saw each other, we literally got it on, the action. We made a lot of love, and I was enjoying every moment of it up until we both got hungry. We knew that we had to order something to eat. We continued with our lovemaking or intimate session while waiting for the food. I think I had fallen so much in love with Trevor, and somehow I had to end it before it was too late. Well, it was already late, darling, because my husband had already found out about my abomination. But as time went on, I began to feel guilty about my affair with Trevor. I knew that I was hurting Nick, the man I had promised to love and cherish for the rest of my life. But what would I have done if he didn't care about my happiness and my desires? The only thing he would do was to shower me with gifts, romantic dinners, and love, but that was not enough for me. I didn't need any materialistic things from him. I needed his attention, affection, and happiness. Sometimes love alone is not enough, right? So as Trevor and I were spending the night together, I was just happy, Well, more like my heart desire was fulfilled. So after having a lot of S***, we decided to take a break and chill a bit. So we watched a TV that was in the room that we were in. Then all of a sudden we heard a knock. My mind quickly registered that we had ordered something to eat, and we had forgotten about food because we were so cooped up in our moment of intimacy. So I decided to go and open so I could take our order. Mind you, that time Trevor was butt naked, and I was wearing lingerie only. So I opened the door and got the worst shock of my life. I just couldn't believe it, like I was asking myself, how did he find me and who told him that I would be here? I knew there and then that I was screwed, and there's no denying it. Nick was standing right in front of me looking at me, wearing lingerie only. Surely he told himself that I was going to accept the food while wearing something floozy. I knew there and then that my marriage was hanging on a very high and dangerous cliff. When you get that feeling that tells you that everything you had worked hard for was about to go south instead of north side? That was what I had felt, and I couldn't even blame anyone for it. About a week after he had moved out, a delivery guy had come to the house stating that he had come to deliver the parcel when I asked who had sent it. He told me what all other delivery guys usually say, "I don't know, man, I'm just a delivery guy." My conscience told me that maybe it was something from my business client since I was an artist. Little did I know that it was actually divorce papers, and he wanted me to move out of the house. I thought I was going crazy, like my mind was about to burst like a bomb. I couldn't believe why Nick would just decide to send me such things. Why couldn't he sit down with me and talk like a married and matured couple? But he went out there and filed for a divorce plus full ownership of the house. I couldn't let him win just like that. If he wanted to go, he should have told me, but not to go to our family lawyer and file for a divorce plus full ownership of the house. I was actually given 2 weeks to vacate the house, or else legal actions would be taken against me. And I knew that even if I was to try and fight him, I wouldn't win because I was the one who went outside my marriage and committed adultery. I knew that IF***** get up, and I'm owning up to my Shay****. But why would Nick kick me out of the house? I mean, the house is a joint asset that we both contribute to. So why would he take such an extreme decision? That night when he caught me and Trevor in that B&B, I really thought he was going to start his anger issues episodes. I would actually prefer him to be enraged, destroy things, and throw insults. But the Nick that was in that B&B was someone I don't know. He was too quiet for my liking. I knew my husband would just burst when he found something like he did, but he was just calm. And I knew that the calmness was not a good sign, and I had to be worried. As we sat there, Nick calmly asked what was going on, and words got stuck in my tongue. I'm not a person who just gets tongue-tied. I always have answers for everything. But that day I was stuck and I froze on the spot. It was like my mind went into another freezing zone and it couldn't think properly. My heart was beating pretty fast. I didn't know what to do. And Trevor, on another hand, came out to check why I was taking so long to get the food. Little did he know that he would put himself in a serious situation. Trevor and Nick just made eye contact and it wasn't comfortable. I couldn't believe the guy. He should have just apologized and maybe lied to Nick, telling him it was what it looked like or it was not what he was thinking. I mean, these people were best friends and I had to destroy that friendship because of my evil desires. But no, he sat there waiting for whatever Marcus was going to do. After some time, I contained myself and came back from the freezing zone that my mind was in. So I hesitated, not wanting to hurt Nick, but also not wanting to lie to him. I've been spending time with Trevor, I said, my voice trembling. Not because I was scared of Nick, but I was scared of the outcome that would take place. I didn't want to lose Nick over Trevor, his supposed best friend. Yes, the guy was charming, handsome, and sexy and all, but I didn't want to lose my husband. Nick was my strength, so I couldn't allow a guy that I had known for like 2 seconds ago to destroy what Nick and I had built. I had to tell the truth and hope for a better outcome. 2 days later, my husband and I went back to Brooklyn. Well, more like I went back because I was driving in the front and he was following me behind. When we got home, he didn't talk to me for the whole 2 days. The only thing he did when we got back home was glancing at me with eyes full of hatred and anger. He was pretty angry at me. I know I had done him wrong, but if he was there with me, none of that would have happened. But I couldn't tell him that because it would sound like I was selfish for wanting to spend more time with him. But he decided to put his job first over his wife. So over the next few days, my husband became more and more distant. He stopped talking to me, and when I asked why he was avoiding me, we should probably talk about the matter at hand somehow. I knew that something was wrong, but I had no idea what it was because as much as I did him wrong. I told him the truth of what was happening between Trevor and myself. He told me that he has a clip of me calling Trevor's name and telling him about the loneliness that I was feeling in our marriage. I couldn't believe that he went behind my back and did that. He even told me that I was just like all the other loose and cheap women, who were always looking for fun and good times with other men. He asked why I couldn't cheat with other guys, why I chose his best friend, and he couldn't believe that he had married a cheap, evil witch, that I should sleep with one eye open and always look over my shoulder wherever I go, because he was going to destroy me just like how I destroyed his heart. That really stung because the way he said those words, it was like he was swearing at me, and yes, he was actually. It really hurt me to hear him say that, but the voice that he used to say those words was a mix of anger, disappointment, hurt, and sadness. I knew there and then that I had hurt my husband in the worst way possible. I felt a stinging sensation in my eyes as his words hit their mark. I had never been one to cheat on my husband, but I had let my desires get the better of me. I tried apologizing to him, but he didn't want to hear it. The only thing he wanted to know was why I did that, meaning I had to come clean. Hoping he would understand and we find a common ground to solve whatever happened. I mean, it was not like I had fallen in love with Trevor. It was just a, you help my desires and I help yours situation. So I told him that it was not my intention to hurt him, but I just needed something more in my life. I mean, he was always busy for me. The only time he would spend time with me was during dinner or spend time with his computers and not me. And even our bedroom activities were no longer exciting and affectionate. As I went about my day, completely unaware of the lens capturing my every interaction, the truth slowly unraveled. What started as a normal day turned into a nightmare as the footage revealed the heartbreaking betrayal. Trust shattered, relationships destroyed, and lives forever changed by a simple piece of technology. I just couldn't believe that Nick would actually do this to me. My mind was playing a lot of clips. Somehow I thought that maybe they were working together with Trevor. Maybe I was a bait to check if I was loyal and weak or not, and I fell for that trap. Weeks later, I had gone back to my Nana's house since Nick kicked me out, and I didn't win for obvious reasons. 2 police officers came to my Nana's house and asked to speak to me. They told me that I was involved in some fraud, whatever thing that they had said, and just like that, I was arrested. As if that was big enough, but when I got out of prison after a month, I discovered that all my banking accounts were frozen. I couldn't believe the fact that Nick had destroyed my life like that. I had lost my clients and everything. I mean, no one would want to associate themselves with a fraudster, right? As I had thought I had suffered enough, the clip of me and Trevor making out was actually all over social media. That really took the little energy that I had to survive. And I knew that it wasn't going to end there because Nick had already warned me. I don't know what I should do. I still love the guy, but I'm scared for my life. Please help me.